Hi, everybody, and welcome to this lovely, I don't want to say summer because it technically for me, like once the weather starts getting warmer, it's summer, but like people will be like, oh, well, it's not technically summer because we didn't have the summer solstice or whatever. But I'm going to say it's June. So kids are getting out of school. It's the warm weather's coming. It's summer. Now, a lot of you people probably a lot of you probably disagree with me and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm so excited about the warm weather." Believe it or not, I am a cold weather fan. I love the winter. I love the snow. When it gets too humid and the heat gets too hot, I am not a happy camper. So I like it at a nice 68, but once it starts getting up. So this kind of season rolling around, once fall hits, oh my God, loving the pumpkins, pumpkin spices. But I'm sure a lot of you are very excited that the weather's getting warmer. We have had a crazy, crazy past 6 weeks with everything that's gone on in the world. We've had two eclipses. We have had the eclipse portal closing. So a lot of situations that a lot of you have been going through in the last 15 years kind of came to a crux, and a lot of people have been messaging me with breakdowns, finally being ready to resolve old wounds, old issues, trauma, all that kind of stuff is starting to come up from childhood because we are going into a new dimension. We are going into another era. And it doesn't seem like that right now because of everything that seems so destructive in our world. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And, the universe is asking you to kind of level up and to take what you haven't been able to process in the last 15 years that maybe didn't even have to do with the last 15 years, but maybe you've been reenacting in the last 15 years trauma from when you were a child, or repeating patterns in your career, your relationship, your self-love, loving yourself. And I know that's so cliche, and I always heard it, and I actually resented people saying just love yourself, just just show yourself. Like, what does that mean? It is so vague. Okay, I love myself, you know what I mean? But yet you're playing out these patterns. It's like, I want a step-by-step process to how to change, you know what I mean? And even I would read self-help books, I do everything, talk about my issues. And what came down to is that the patterns reside in your cells, deeply in your muscles, in your body. And so that affects your brain chemistry and your neuroception, and so your brain is hardwired to respond and react to what is familiar. And so that if you've had, a childhood where things were unstable, you're going to attract that same energy as you move forward in life, even though you want to change it, because your brain is telling you that's what's familiar. That's what feels like home. That's what feels safe, even though you know it's bad for you. And your intuition is actually saying this is bad for me. You're like, what's wrong with me that my intuition is telling me this? And yet I can't break this pattern. I keep taking actions against what my intuition is saying. And tonight we're going to talk about that. And some people, because the trauma has been so difficult, or because these patterns have been so difficult, they need a spiritual awakening. They need a spiritual experience. So I have my guest tonight is going to be very, very influential on this topic, and I cannot wait to bring her on. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and I just want to say hi to you in the comments. Make sure that you say hello. Make sure to tell me you're here. We will be answering questions in the comments, and sometimes if we get a little, into the interview, we will, after the show is done airing, during the replay or right after the show, we'll come into the comments and answer your questions. So just make sure that if you'd like to address our guests or me, just put it in the comments and we'd be happy to get back to you. Now, for those of you that do not get my monthly energy forecast, that goes out on the 15th of every month. If you're not on my email list, you're not getting that in your inbox. So make sure you go to the link in the description of this video, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook, and get on my list to receive the exclusive monthly energy forecast, where I go over every single day of the month and which days are the best days for timing when it comes to making decisions about love, career, romance, relocation, all that different stuff. Because you can have the best of intentions and do the exact right things, but if the universal timing and your personal timing don't line up, it's not going to have the success that you'd like it to have. So make sure that you're getting on that list. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel so that when we are live, you'll be getting an email notification to jump on the stream, and make sure you're on our Facebook page as well. All right, let me just tell you about our lovely guest. Her name is Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro. I hope, oh, you know what? I should have asked her. I'm a big into names. Foderaro. Oh my God. She's probably going to kill me. Dr. Marni Hill Ford, Foderaro. Foderaro? Okay. She's in backstage saying, okay, that's right. I should have asked. Is an award-winning and celebrated author, speaker, and educator. She earned her doctorate in education from Northern Illinois University and completed postdoctoral studies at Harvard after a very successful and rewarding 35-year career as a high school special education teacher with 12 years as a university adjunct graduate school professor. Marni's life was forever changed after experiencing numerous trauma induced STEs. Now, this is something I've been in this business 25 years plus, and this is something I haven't heard of. It's called an STE. I've heard of NDEs. We just went over that last couple weeks. Spiritually Transformative Encounters. I didn't know it had a specific name, but I'm very interested to hear more about this. I love having guests on that teach me something that I haven't heard of. It's very interesting to me. Marni's 2020 Best Books Award winning spiritual fiction, her book, God Came to My Garage Sale. I love that title, by the way. It's so like, what do you mean God came to your garage sale? Like you're putting out your furniture and God shows up, like kind of being like, I'll give you $2 for this, $5 for this, right? It's predominantly endorsed by James Redfield, best-selling author of the Celestine Prophecy series of books, celebrity psychic mediums, and founding directors of IANDS, International Association for Near-Death Studies. Marni's latest, predominantly endorsed 5-book series is entitled True Deceit, False Love. That addresses domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, parental alienation, which is another term I need to know more about, and intergenerational family trauma, which we talk about a lot on this show. Marni is a contributing author to numerous anthology books, and in January 2022 was inducted into the Bestselling Authors International Organization. So I am very excited to bring her on. Let's welcome to the show, Dr. Marni. How are you?
Hey, Marissa, great to see you. Thanks for having me on the lounge.
Absolutely. And I am sorry I didn't ask how to pronounce your last name.
Oh,
So I'm sorry.
I get it wrong. I get it wrong sometimes too. So Foderaro.
Foderaro. Okay. I said Hill properly, but then I saw
That's
that. I said, uh-oh, here we go.
that's all right.
So let me just start by getting right into it and asking you, how did you come up with this amazing title that is yet humorous but spiritual at the same time? I think it's genius.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I am so thrilled that my first writing endeavor has been doing very well. So, spiritual fiction, God came to my garage sale, but it was really inspired by true experiences that, the majority of them I had at a garage sale. So, I was leaving a 27-year marriage, um, leaving my American dream, didn't realize that I would be experiencing tremendous trauma as a result of that decision. I knew that there would be some repercussions, but I didn't even realize at the time that I was really for many years in an abusive situation. And so my values of honesty, goodness, love, working together, they were not the same values of who I was with. So, the bottom line is, just like anyone who leaves, a toxic situation, very often you lose everything. I thought my house was paid off for 10 years. I had money in the bank and all that. That was not the case, so lost my home to foreclosure, lost my assets, the money was depleted. Even lost 2 adult children to parental alienation, which I think we'll get into a little bit
Mm-hmm.
so that you can understand what that's all about. I didn't know what it was about either, and I had to really learn about this. But in the midst of this, I had a garage sale because I had to definitely downsize
Yeah.
and leave my beautiful neighborhood. But instead of having negative feelings or being sad or angry, I was just really in a state of gratitude and love
Mm.
and, just thankfulness. And so I really approached this very traumatic transition in a really positive way, which I think has served me well. And as a result, just like many traumas, are happen before someone has, a spiritual awakening of sorts.
Mhm.
Like the people you've talked about near death experiences on your show, um, they've flatlined. They had
Mhm.
a traumatic medical event that led them to an experience that, at this point, with so many testimonials, so much scientific documentation, it's irrefutable that people have had these spiritual experiences. Well, you can have that even without dying, if you suffer a significant loss or trauma, and that's what
Mhm.
happened to me. So I actually had some amazing things happen at the garage sale, a little before, a little after. It prompted me to really look back in my life to see that I really actually have had some other spiritual experiences throughout my life. And definitely since, um, working through this particular trauma, I, it's almost like my spirit and my gifts and my mind and my heart are open to signs and synchronicities to give me the reassurance that there's more going on in this world. It's not just that we live and die. And mind you, also, Marissa, I had an atheist background. Uh,
Wow, really?
yeah. So I actually grew up with no exposure to organized religion or
Mm.
spirituality, and so on my own, as I got older, I questioned things and I did seek out organized religion, and I knew there had to be a divine power at some point. There had to be a God. And that really, was shown to me while I was going through this traumatic experience. So I, just like many people that have had these experiences, I was compelled to share. I was compelled to talk about it, to write about it. And that's how that book came about. God came to my garage.
Yeah. I have a couple questions. I like to interview when I hear something very interesting. I'm like, let me get on that and get in deeper. So, when you were talking about this toxic situation, this
Yeah.
trauma, I'm assuming you're talking about your marriage.
Right.
And you said that in those 27 years, you did not know you were in an abusive relationship. Can you tell
No,
me more about
yeah,
that?
sure, sure. I would
Yeah.
say that the majority, you hear this a lot from survivors of any kind of domestic abuse, you
Mhm.
know, um, that they don't really realize what's going on until after you leave the situation. I mean, there's some red flags,
Mhm.
but so many of us get busy in our lives. We already have a preconceived idea of what we want for our future. I wanted this marriage to be a forever marriage. I wanted this home to be a forever home. I was very successful in my professional life as a teacher. I was, a high school teacher for 35 years, 12 years. I was an adjunct graduate school professor. I loved being a mom. That was like the biggest role of my life, the biggest
Mhm.
joy of my life. And abusers know what you what you love the most. So after they've taken everything, they do try to destroy you in any way that they
Right.
can. And in my case, having the children brainwashed and aligned with a false narrative was just exactly what he wanted to try to get me to cave in. But I've never been a suicidal person. I've always been a happy person. But part of the when you realize that you've been in this situation, you have to do at some point a real deep dive into your own intergenerational family relationships. And you need to look at yourself and what makes you a target for abuse. What makes you an overgiver or an extreme empath? Someone who will put up with stuff that people shouldn't put up with.
Mhm. And did you have a family life when you looked back on it that there was trauma in your
Yes.
childhood?
Yes, and I knew
Okay.
I did too. And actually, the abusers know that as well too. I mean, you're hand selected before you even get into a relationship with some of these toxic people. And it can also be friends. It could
Mhm.
also be some family members. It could actually be a work situation that
Mm.
is very unhealthy. It doesn't always have to be a marriage. And let me also say this happens to men just as much as
Yeah,
it happens to women. So it's
right,
not a gender specific situation at all.
right.
Yeah, I did. I looked, but here I'm 60 years old now, Marissa, and it took me how long to really kind of come to terms with what happened because I ignored red flags for years. I just went along my busy life, just ignoring things that I shouldn't have ignored, whether it's the isolation, whether it's the, um, affairs, whether it is, the late nights at work for someone who doesn't really need to have late nights at work. And I mean, there's just a lot of things, the money manipulation. A lot of abusers are obsessed with money and
Mm.
assets and really, value that over love and connection and things that, are not, tangible. And, it's just a completely different value system.
So
And
what made you actually decide you wanted to leave if you didn't know this was going on?
Like I said, so many red flags for so many years, even
Yeah.
before I was married. But there was a defining moment for me where
Mhm.
one night over pizza, I was with one of my adult children, and, there were some confessions made that
Mm.
were, I think, unintentional. I think,
Confessions via your husband or via
yeah,
the children?
yeah, no, the ex, you
Okay.
know,
I'm sorry. I meant like your
no,
husband at the time. Yeah,
right,
sorry.
right. No, that's okay. He revealed a lot of things that I don't think he intentionally meant to reveal at that
Mhm.
time. It took me by surprise as well. But what I have learned is that abusers masks fall. So like in this 5 book series I have, here's one of the books. All of the books have an abuser, an image of an abuser with a mask and the mask slipping. I mean, all of them. This is the latest book, out of the 5 book series. And I even went on to write a workbook. Again, there you go with the mask. So these people eventually tell on themselves. Even friends that you thought were solid, that you've had for years, sometimes can reveal themselves with just a simple comment or reaction or response. And you have to be at the right time to just pay attention to it and connect the dots to, like, wait a minute, this is serious here, and I have a decision to make. Do I stay in this? Do I stay in this and ignore it and keep on going, or do I make a change and get out? And ideally, it's good if you can plan your escape. I didn't do that. I just kind of went with my own gut feeling and just, I kind of went silent and kind of shocked by some of the things that I heard. Even the adult child was extremely shocked by.
Can you let us know what I mean, without saying too much that you don't want to reveal, like,
Yeah.
along what line
Well,
was this
it was
confession?
a number of things, and one of the things, so I don't want to get into all the
Yeah,
details,
yeah, yeah.
but one of the things had to do with some money manipulation
Mm,
that
right.
was so unethical, that after years of money manipulation, and money control and gaslighting that happens
Yeah.
to, you are made to believe that you're not seeing things you see, or that you are misinterpreting things. I mean, or you start to lose confidence in your own kind of ability to assess a situation, which happens to very strong, intelligent people. It's amazing how these abusers are skilled at breaking down, um, you know your abilities, your self-worth. And so that was just shocking to me. It kind of made me go silent. And for someone who normally has no problem talking and working things out, I just it I didn't let on that I knew immediately I was going to escape, because I was scared. I mean, I was really scared of what he would do. And I still have that some fear. I
Yeah.
filed for divorce in 2013. The abuser is still taking me to court, even though we had adult children at the time. And it's a lot of it is money and control and that type of thing. They want to
Mhm.
save their false public image at all costs.
Mhm.
They don't want to be exposed, but the bottom line is they expose themselves. And so anyway, then the following day or a day after, it's hard for me to remember the timeline exactly there, but then it got physical. For the first time in all those years, in over 2 decades. And I was shoved up against a wall. And what I was told was, don't you dare divorce me. I never even said anything about divorce. So he
Mhm.
probably knew I enough was enough. The light bulb finally went on. But don't you dare divorce me, or I'll take your home, your money, and your children. And so he, and it's something that we actually even see played out globally, where the bad people, the people with bad, malevolent intentions, tell on themselves, and they kind of, expose themselves of what they're going to do. And that's what happened to me. But you know what? It's been a very challenging road, especially legally, because, when they can't control you, they control what other people think of you. There's a smear campaign, you lose your support system. Friends and neighbors that you thought you were connected with for years and years are no longer, won't even answer your phone calls. And for me, I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I didn't know all the details of the lies that were told, but I knew something had to have been told when, people that I had, gone to church with for years, or I had been in the neighborhood for years, just wouldn't have anything to do with me.
Mhm.
But I was so strong in who I was as a person, and I knew that I was making the safest, best decision for myself, that, I was able to handle all these losses. And then, when I did a lot of the inner work, looking back at my own parents and the dynamics I grew up with, because I came from a divorced family, but it wasn't until much later that I saw how one parent abused the other, or how the other parent abused the other parent. I mean, there was just a lot going on that was extremely toxic. And I, for all these years, just was a people pleaser, just overgiver, trying to be generous, trying to reach out, initiating all of that. And finally, I had to come to realize, wait a minute, I need to honor myself now and realize what I have gone through. And it does kind of give some answers to why I would choose certain relationships or stay in certain relationships when I really should have, gotten out of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cheating and stuff, so you knew that he was having affairs during the
Yeah.
course of your marriage, and
Yeah.
that wasn't enough for you to say, I want it, like, it you
It wasn't even enough
yeah,
for me to confront it.
wow.
So
But yeah.
and actually, even the children were aware of some things and would even say something to me, Mom, did you see how they were, acting with each other,
Mhm.
and that there'd be people that would actually show up at our house just as I
Yes.
was leaving. And, I was in such denial, though,
Mhm.
because I had this perfect family. I never ever wanted to hurt my children. So I think in the back of my mind, I thought, even though my children are adults, that it's important for me to stay in this, because I don't want to, have their lives torn apart. However, I have since learned that staying in a situation that's not healthy is also role modeling for your children, that
Right.
you can be treated terribly and you just stick it out.
Mhm.
You don't value yourself. So really, whether I stayed or I left, our lives would never be the same.
Mhm. Right.
And I needed to stay true to who I was. And then, you know, at some point when it got to that point, I realized I didn't even really like this individual. I
Mhm.
didn't really, I mean, and that was for a long time. You know,
Mhm.
I loved that person just like I love my parents, even though um, I may not talk with them at certain times, or I may have more of a low contact, you know, keep my distance and pick and choose, you know, when I want to interact. But that doesn't mean you don't love them. And I certainly loved my husband. And there are many things about my 27-year marriage that I loved.
Mhm.
Oh, and definitely having these two beautiful children was a big part of it. But, you know, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that goes on because there's everything is intermittent with the reinforcement, you know. So there could be some bad, challenging times, but then you can be love bombed with, you know, a trip or, you know, a piece of jewelry or
Mhm.
a little attention, you know. And you know, when you're starved for any kind of attention and you get a little bit of it, you know, it hooks you back in.
Mhm.
And many people that leave toxic relationships find themselves going right back into another
Mm.
toxic
Right.
relationship. Now, luckily, I didn't.
Right.
Um, you know, I really didn't, and I am so blessed that I am spending the rest of my life with a wonderful man who understands the situation, is very, very supportive, knows all the players, and he himself, you know, has been through a lot, and we were there for each other, and
Mhm.
so it wasn't anything I sought out as far as trying to get back into a dating scene or anything like that. But I think some people do, thinking that's what they should do, but they might find themselves right back into an abusive situation. And it could even be worse than the previous one. And,
Yeah.
but it's all part of our journey.
Mhm.
I think that, you know, that it's all part of our life journey.
Mhm.
So, really, the people that have caused tremendous pain, whether it is family, friends, you know, relationships, they can be our biggest blessings because without that negativity, we don't see or appreciate the light and the positivity.
Absolutely. You make a good point, and you talk about most people live their life until if they have this pattern. Most people live their life to, could be 70s or 80s, and they're still playing it out till they die.
Yes.
There is not much, a high percentage of people that come out of that type of relationship and have a situation like you've had. So
Right.
I'm assuming I want to get to your spiritually transformative experiences because I'm sure by this point our audience is like, yes, that's me. That's me. I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
So what took place during this garage sale which spiritually transformed your life? We want to hear about the hope and maybe what happened to kind of it seems like you were healed in some way or something
Very much
happened.
so. At least I
Yeah.
was on the beginning of the healing journey. So
Yeah.
my eyes were opened up, and there were many experiences. I mean, many that I have written in my spiritual fiction. You know, God came to my garage sale, and they could involve finding specifically dated pennies or specifically colored feathers or red cardinals or just things you think are coincidences, but they really are not. They're definitely synchronistic. Um, there are some experiences that you see visually. There are some that you know or that you feel. So one big example, and I wrote about this in chapter 1 my spiritual fiction. Even though, like I said, it's a fiction, it's really inspired by real
Yeah.
events, the
Right.
majority of my own. I was looking at my home kind of in a state of gratitude, just kind of saying goodbye to my home. And I really just got within myself. I was sort of in a zone, kind of deep within myself. All of a sudden, there was a dragonfly that circled me, and I thought, no big deal. And after 5 dragonflies, I didn't think any big deal. But within a 5 to 8 minute period, there were 50 to 100 dragonflies circling me. And
The
I
garage
was,
sale at the garage sale there
it was
was?
right before, it was
Right
right before.
before? Okay. Okay.
And because I was, you know, getting ready for this, but just kind of saying goodbye. I knew my life would never ever be the same.
Mhm.
But everything happened in slow motion. It was almost like an out of body experience because I I just was in a trance in a way. Everything was slow motion, and I could see these dragonflies fly down the road, come back, circle me. Everything was so slow that I saw the veins in the wings. I saw the iridescent colors. I saw different sizes, and I equated them to babies and toddlers and teenagers and grandparents and, you know, all these generations of either my ancestors or, people from the neighborhood or people from the world. I had no idea. Um, they were giving me a sense of peace and reassurance that I would be okay. So literally, I had just about 100 dragonflies circling me. And actually, about 3/4 of the way, through this experience, I started to come to. I kind of started to get out of that kind of clear jello feeling of just being slow motion. And I knew to pull out my cell phone. And I pulled out my cell phone and I videotaped, all these dragonflies to just kind of show something happened to me here. Well,
Mhm.
that went on. I went on to have other dragonfly experiences and then to research about dragonflies, about how they're transformative, transformational in many different cultures. And at one point, so the garage sale was, around the summertime. And then I just like, I know you like the cold weather too, even though I live in the Caribbean in the tropics. I love the cold weather as well and go skiing every year for a few weeks. And there wasn't, I usually go out west and there wasn't any snow out west. So Rick, my life partner, and I did a road trip to Minnesota, to Taylor Falls, and we had Thanksgiving there, but also there were some ski runs open. So we got to
Mhm.
experience the outdoors. And very different Thanksgiving, where I could have been sad. I could wallow in self pity because that was the first holiday of now over 10 years of not having holidays with my children or family. um I didn't know that that would be my how it would play out, but that's how it played out. But I was still in such a state of gratitude. We ended up having a delightful Thanksgiving dinner at a little diner on a main street. It was just very, very simple but very wonderful because I felt like I was going to be safe, and I knew I was surrounded in love, and I had had that dragonfly experience, except as well as all the other experiences at the garage sale. Um, Rick and I just said, "Hey, let's look for a winery," and we weren't sure that one would be open. And within a mile, we came across the Dancing Dragonfly Winery,
Mhm.
and it was so validating because the backstory of the owner of this Dragonfly Winery, um, they had pretty much the same story I did, with the
Wow.
in a state of that could have been negative. They're in a state of gratitude, and dragonflies just started swarming around as if to just give you a hug that you will be okay. So that's one significant, and there are many. I could go on and on. I could, in fact, I will be speaking. It's June now, but I will be speaking in the middle of June at the SAI conference, which is Spiritual Awakenings International
Mm.
conference. And you had said, you hadn't heard that term before. I interchange encounters with it because I tend to use the word experience a lot. But Dr. Yvonne Kaysen, who is a medical doctor, but also a psychoanalytical doctor, she was very involved with IANS, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And she's had many near-death experiences herself. But she also believed that people who have had spiritual awakenings, or, that didn't flatline,
Mhm.
that but had some of the same experiences, um, there should be a place for them to discuss their encounters and all that. So she actually coined that term STE, or spirit
Okay.
transformative experience. And so I will be speaking at this international conference in a couple of weeks, along with many other people that have had these kinds of experiences, to bring awareness that, if we pay attention to signs and synchronicities, if we acknowledge some of the experiences we've gone through, we can realize that they are otherworldly. They are definitely of a spiritual nature.
Yeah, now that you're saying what that is, I definitely had that happen,
Sure.
many, many times, especially when I was 14. I had a very strong spiritual experience that I still talk about, that's still very, very vivid in
Right.
my life, that many people do have when they flatline. So, but I was, 14 years old, and it
Right.
came in a dream vision, but it happened a couple times that same year. So absolutely. So how could people is this on Zoom live, or is it people can watch it streamed, or
Yeah,
is it
actually it's free too. There are
okay?
different parts of it that are free, but you just look up SAI, so Spiritual Awakenings International, and it is a conference with lots of speakers. It's over a 2-day period, Saturday and Sunday. I believe it's June 11th and 12th. And I'm actually speaking on Sunday, but there are great people to just check out and tune in to. But yeah, that's going to be, it's virtual. Yeah. So
Yeah,
even though many of these kinds of conferences and summits and that type of thing are getting back to in person, I think at this point, because there are people also from all over the world, this kind of virtual platform is a really good platform to be able to get people from all these different countries to participate.
that's amazing. And
Yeah.
I just want to, before we get into talking about your book, which I want to talk about how you can get that, I just want to get into some tips and takeaways for our audience, that maybe if they were in a similar situation, or maybe they don't know if they're in a similar situation, what are some practical things that somebody could look out for to say, hey, I need to make a change, it's the other person, or I need to make a change because it's my projection, it's myself. I'm the one that's causing my own fears or insecurities. What can we say to people out there that can give them some sense of, is it me or is it them? Am I crazy?
Well, when you're dealing with an abuser, it's them. So, like, even with parental alienation, which is where in a divorce or separation situation where the loving, normal range parent that was always there for them gets rejected 100% by their child, and they align with the more abusing parent because they don't want, they've witnessed things, or if they're younger kids, they might not know any better, but
Mhm.
they these people, like I said, are skilled in getting people on their side to believe their very false narrative. So I would say the majority of the situations, really, it is the other person. It doesn't mean that you point the finger all the time. You need to look into you know your own life and your own interactions and your own responses to things. But as far as some signs, I would say, first and foremost, follow your gut intuition. If something in your gut does not feel right,
Mhm.
some interaction that you witness or something that you read or see, or hear, if something just doesn't seem right, it probably isn't right. We don't pay attention to our intuition as much as we should, because really we are getting guided by spirit, you know or by experience or whatever, that we really need to pay attention. So follow your gut intuition if something doesn't feel right. If you find that you are slowly isolated from your support system, like friends and neighbors and family, if you find you're isolated, that's a huge tactic that abusers use. They don't, in fact, many people, their adult children don't even have a relationship with each other, the siblings, because the abuser doesn't want them to compare notes, because then if they got to talk.
I have to stop you just because I'll lose my train of thought here.
Yeah.
Um, you said something just now, and I already already lost it. Let me see. Um,
Well,
that
I was talking about isolation.
yeah, yes, that's what I want to ask you. Are you saying that they caused the isolation, or are you saying that the person wants to isolate because of their depression? Which
No,
one
no,
is it?
no. What they do, well, the victim
Right?
oftentimes ends up isolating themselves because they've been gaslit to believe certain narratives that aren't true. So,
Mm,
but the isolation is purposely done so that when the event happens, when you really, your light bulb goes on and you need to get out, they've already set the stage that you will not have that support system. So they will isolate you. They will say things like, well, did you know that good friend of yours, they're really a bad person. They did
mm,
this, and this, but don't talk to them about it. Don't confront them, but I'm just letting you know because I care about you and I think that you should have nothing to do with this friend. When
mm,
really that friend could be a real positive influence, and
mhm.
they are trying to separate you from that relationship because they don't want you to have that support system. So they might initiate it, but you in turn might follow through and back
Mhm.
off.
I see. Okay, makes
Yeah.
sense.
So
Well,
isolation is a big one.
okay. And is there another one you wanted to point out before we get to your book, or was that the last
No,
one?
no, there's many different things.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
realize that you have slowly lost any kind of involvement with your assets, with your money,
Mhm.
so many of these people are so money driven that they make sure things, investments, in fact, in my case, without me knowing it, over a number of years, even though we both, worked together with a financial planner, um, he would also meet without me many times, and sometimes that would just be on my own accord. I was busy with the kids and stuff like that. I was, you know, but I had no idea. And I actually saw this in a written documentation. So I'm not making this up, that the assets, the investments were 95% in his name when really it was not the case when we started out. And I
Right.
also had put aside thousands and thousands of dollars in an account
Mm.
for each of the kids for like a college fund, or if they didn't
Mhm.
want to go to college, that's okay. If they wanted to get married or buy a house or a car, whatever. Um, come to find out after I filed for divorce that those accounts were completely depleted little by little over a number of years, to where um, luckily I had a forensic accountant that helped me put the pieces of all this puzzle together. And I spent a lot of time at various banks with their supervisors, going through and collecting documentation for years. Not and that didn't really help me legally, but it gave me the peace of mind or the understanding of what really went on. So if there's money manipulation, if there's where you're told, well, you shouldn't even have a checking account, you're given an allowance because you really can't handle money that well.
Mhm.
Or I mean, if you notice that your significant other, whether it's a husband or wife or boyfriend, girlfriend, if they are gone all the time, or if they have secret text messages, or if they have private passcodes, like passwords with different things embedded in them. And some of these people actually, it turns out, have a second family when they've
Mhm.
already had, you think you're the primary family when they've not only had affairs, they have a completely double life. So
Right.
it's amazing when the truth comes out, the extremes that people will go to conceal the truth from
Mm.
coming out.
All right. Well, we are coming to the end of the show, and I want to get your book promoted here. So, we're going to talk about your book and your live events, godcametoMyGarageSale.com. So, if any of you out there would like to get a copy of Marni's book or go to one of your live events, if you do it virtually or even come to any live events that you have that are live, just go to her website, God Came to My Garage Sale, which is very easy. You can remember it. Com. And also, check out Marni's books, God Came to My Garage Sale, and her 5-book series, True Deceit, False Love. And they are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Balboa Press, and Hay House. And if you'd like to check her out with, for the conference, you're speaking on Sunday, and that's something I'm going to check out too. The Spiritual Awakenings International Conference, June 11th and 12th. Just Google it, because I just had to put the banner in just now. And I'm sure you guys can get on. It's free, and you can listen to anybody who's had a spiritual experience, transformative experience, which I learned about today from Marni. So thank you very, very much for telling me that.
Sure.
And I so appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience before we start to wrap up?
Well, I would just say we all have challenges in our life. I talked about some domestic family kind of trauma situations, but people have challenges with their work, with their health, with their finances, with their own well-being. Realize we all have challenges, but if we choose to handle these challenges with love, honesty, and goodness, and a little bit of research, doing some of the inner work, we are going to be closer and closer to healing some of these challenges and going on to live a happy, blessed life. And, you may find yourself in a period of darkness right now, but pay attention to some signs and synchronicities. Like, even if you're just tuning into this podcast, this interview today, that might prompt you to think about, your own life, your own experiences, or it might prompt you to get a book or to learn about spiritual awakenings. Everything is a step towards self-actualization. And so, be kind to yourself and realize that, you are a loving, worthwhile human being. And even if you may not be honored by other people or other situations, you can honor yourself. And it's a journey. And the journey's can be a challenging one. There are parts of it that can be wonderful. But in the end, I think the closer we are aware to where we are at and our truth, the better we are off.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all your hope and being so open with your story and what you've been through. And I'm so happy to hear that you are with somebody now who is supportive and loving and nurturing, and you feel safe and secure with that person.
And that's huge. That's huge because, fear, we've all experienced fear even in the last couple of years. The fear is real, and abusers use fear to get their narrative going or to manipulate you to do something. So try to get yourself into a safe, happy situation.
Yeah. And if you feel like you're going into that pattern again, really seek out some spiritual counseling or a mentor. Sometimes we can't see it ourselves. So it's important that you have somebody that can reflect to you what's going on, the steps you need to take, and have it be a safe person that you can trust. I think that's really important. So Dr. Marni, thank you so much. And I'm just going to put on again, if you'd like to get one of her books, you go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Balboa Press, Hay House. Just again, her website is godcametomygarage.com. And you can see her speak at the Spiritual Awakenings International Conference on June 11th and 12th. So this is great. Wonderful.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Marisa. And, I've been following you, and, you're the real deal. And
thank you.
It's very refreshing to find that. And so definitely your newsletters that you put out every month are great as well. I mean, you are so spot on with the May one, just spot on.
Thank you.
So I'm so glad that we finally, even though it's virtually, we got to meet in person here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And once again, Dr. Marni, thank you so much for coming on. And I hope that in the comments, you guys will write, anything you'd like to ask, and we will get back to you once the show is over or tomorrow. Thank you so much. And you guys have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.